Woo! Welcome to a playoff preview edition of Amazin But True, our New York Mets podcast from the New York Post. Thanks to SNY for those highlights. The best moments, a couple of them. There's just too many to play on. There'll be a whole podcast of the best moments. Those were just some of the best ones from the Mets season. It's Jake Brown here alongside my co-host, former Mets pitcher Nelson Figueroa. Andrew Hart's our producer with us as well. And Figgy, the playoffs are finally here. We've been waiting for this moment a long time. Unfortunately, it'll come in the wild card, but I have turned my negativity from Sunday night. I think I just needed a night of sleep. I needed to think about it a few days. They helped bring the morale up by just demolishing the Nationals for 3 games. Well, 2 of the 3 they demolished. We saw Francisco Alvarez's first career homer. We saw some great pitching. We saw a lot of good things, and we end up in a tie. 101-61, Figgy. Tied, the second best record in Mets history. The last one was when they won their last World Series. Hopefully that's good mojo. The Braves just put on a hell of a run. The Mets lose the tiebreaker. 10-9. One of these games goes the other way. You're not playing, but that's old news. The Padres are coming to Citi Field. It's best 2 out of 3. Steve Gelbs is going to join us in a bit to talk about it, Figgy, but it's all down to this. You paid Scherzer for this. Go out and win Friday. I guess you'll send Bassett if you win Friday for game 2. And if he loses, you have DeGrom, in a must-win scenario on Sunday. Citi Field should be absolutely electric.
Yeah, Gelbs actually used your word too. I was worried about that. But I think one of the biggest things is that this team has been, their ability to bounce back all season long, their ability to, keep these losing streaks to a minimum, and their ability to just find a way to turn the page and say, you know what, look who's on the mound for us tomorrow, and each one of these starters have kind of picked each other up. That's why these losing streaks weren't those long ones that really curtail a season. 101 wins, outstanding. Nobody saw that. Nobody could have predicted that, and that would be a wild card. It just shows you how good you had to be to keep pace with the world champion Atlanta Braves. And there's a reason why they were world champions. They had that 14-game winning streak. They had an 8-game winning streak. They had 2 5-game winning streaks right there. You got almost 30 games in just streak fashion, which then sets the tone for the rest of the year because everybody knows that they're a very dangerous ball club. Now you have to really set your sights on the Padres and really focusing on minimalizing and neutralizing their offense, and at the same time finding ways to capitalize on mistakes that Darvish may make. He's one of those pitchers that can be unhittable, and he can also wind up, spinning his wheels in a circle and walking a few guys and giving up a big, home run. And these Mets have been built to face someone like this where they're not looking to hit home runs, but they can hit the long ball. So I think it's a tremendous matchup. First off, it's a great thing to go through and battle through. You get past them, you're ready. You're ready. That's as much of a sparring partner as you need to go back and get at the Braves for a second time. And I think that's something that you go there, you go to Dodgers. What better way to show that you are the team of destiny if you can get past those first 2 guys and then get back to the Braves if the Braves make it that far. So I think this is a great matchup. I want Scherzer on the mound. Of course, you giving Buck the options. He's going to play his hand the way that I'm pretty much sure that's what he would do. Go Bassett game 2 and then DeGrom for the first game of the DS. What can this team expect from the DH role? I think is going to be pivotal. They're not
going to have Marte. It's going to be Vogelbach, Naquin, Alvarez if he makes the roster. We won't do too deep into who makes the roster because the time people hear this, that might already come out, Figgy, but they have to get production from that role. You're going up against great pitchers this weekend, guys that have killed the Mets, and Darvish. He was 2-0 against the Mets, 1 run in 14 innings. Have to beat him. You're going up against Joe Musgrove, who didn't have a great second half, had a tremendous first half. Blake Snell, 1-1 against the Mets. He could be, ace Blake Snell. He could be number 3 starter Blake Snell.
Right.
But it's 3 solid starting pitchers and a formidable lineup. So you're going up against solid pitchers. You're going up against a lineup that added Juan Soto and Josh Bell, who has Manny Machado carried them. They added former Met Brandon Jury. They have Josh Hader, who is, given the Mets nightmares at times. They got that back end closer. They have to get production with Marte likely out. from, you got Vogel back for a reason. You got Naquin for a reason. They got to show up this weekend.
Yeah, and I think when you look at what the Padres did at the deadline, they went all in, right? They said, screw our top prospect list. Here you go. Give me Juan Soto. Give me Juan Soto for the next 3 years. And kudos to them. It's a great move because they're in a win now mode. And they were built to win. That starting rotation was very, very deep. You had guys who have logged many big innings for other teams. Now they're all together trying to, win a championship on that side. So by no means a cakewalk. At the same time, you got to find ways to show that at home how good you are. If you can be the best team in baseball, at home, play that caliber of baseball. Citi Field has to have every single seat filled. Those fans have to be, being that 10th man. And I talked about that back in 2015 when I first joined SNY, how important that was to be the 10th man, to be someone that to be there and rooting with these guys on, not necessarily booing and doing the things that jackasses do and just trying to show that you're not better than the game. You're paid good money to be there in support of this team, because this
and
team
you
has
saw
done
how that affected
things.
the Braves. Look how much better the Braves rocked that place over the weekend. They've rocked it all season, but you see how well they've done at home with. And listen, the tomahawk chop sucks. The lights out thing sucks. It's dangerous. Stop doing that. But you see what it does for a team like the Braves. So the Mets last time we were here was 2006, and it ended poorly. It was one game, but that was 2016. That was a lineup that had TJ Rivera and his dildo batting fifth. I mean, come on, you knew that was coming. Once you mentioned TJ Rivera, a dildo was hitting fifth, and Rene Rivera, who might as well be a dildo, was hitting 6 or 7. And that lineup was Bruce was 6, and then I think Rene Rivera was 7. And that lineup sucked, and that was no DH either. You had Noah Syndergaard hitting 9, who might actually be who's hitting better than some of the Mets DHs right now. But that lineup wasn't good. So this is a brand new team. This is a team with a RBI leader and a tie with Pete Alonso on 131. This is a team with the batting champion. Congrats to Jeff McNeil.
Yes,
326. What a season. Better get him a Cadillac, Francisco Lindor. We got to shout out Cadillac, of course. Go get him a Caddy. If he gets him like a Toyota Prius, I'm going to be so disappointed.
I don't think McNeil is a Echo Save guy. I could see him getting a nice truck.
And he knows it's a PR move. You got to get him a good car out of a PR move. If he gets him a Toyota Camry, he's driving around an Uber X next week. That just can't be. I mean,
could you imagine him picking you up?
Yeah.
Hi, Jake. Yeah, Jeff. Oh my God.
Is this Squirrel? A squirrel. Yes.
It's
a feel good story for this team.
This team was full of feel good stories. Yeah, and it was nonstop. There's tremendous players and to root for, comeback seasons for a bunch of them. Look at Edwin Diaz, look at Jeff McNeil, look at Francisco Lindor. I didn't hear one time this year, oh, he's not worth the money. I'm actually, when the Braves played, I think it was in late July or August, when I was talking with the Braves, one of their radio shows down there in Atlanta, and they were like, hey, what's the deal with this Lindor guy? He's batting 230. And I go, aren't you the same radio show that was complaining about Freddie Freeman batting 230? And I said, don't worry, the cream rises to the top. And he wound up finishing at almost 300. And of course, they win a World Series, and then they wound up letting him go. But I said, don't worry, Lindor will be just fine. I go, it might not be about batting average this year. Major League batting average has dropped every year. I go, but, he's going to be that guy with the glove, the bat, the smile. He's going to be able to keep this Mets team right at the top of the division. And sure enough, you look up and he finishes off at about 270, a 270 clip, career high, Met records in home runs and RBIs. The defense was spectacular all season long. He was that leader that you wanted to see. The guy who, if for some reason Pete Alonso didn't drive him in, Lindor drove in everybody else, or drove in Alonso because he just drove people in. To have two guys that have that many RBIs, hitting back to back essentially the whole season long, it just a testament to those guys being able to pick each other up and not have the pressure of being the guy who does it all the time. If Pete, swings for the downs and he misses, hey, Lindor comes up there and finds a way to maybe hit it off the end of the bat, hit the ball the other way, do something a little bit different than just try and go up there and swing for the fences. But I mean, you have to tip your cap all the way around. There were so many great moments, so many guys that, I think a testament, of course, would be Escobar. You wanted to throw this guy away. How many times? It was errors. It was this. It was the bat, no production. And if he doesn't have that September to remember, they're not winning 101 games. He did everything to carry this team on his back. Literally 5 RBIs on the, I think either the 29th or 30th. Yeah, 29th or 30th. Towards the very end. And he said, one day I'm going to give you something to cheer about. And he did. And he will continue to do that. And I'm excited for, playoff baseball is here. And this is all the marbles. That's all the marbles. And this is what you want. You want to go in there and let's see, if they can go toe to toe, if the Padres can go toe to toe with the Mets. All right. It's not the other way around. The Padres are going to be the ones that have to keep up. They're on the road. Being on the road, when you have all those fans, ask the Mets how that was in Atlanta. Those fans were absolutely out of control, making the Mets feel like they are the enemy in enemy territory. And it makes it so much more difficult. There is just another level that maybe they haven't been to. There's just another level that they don't get in sunny San Diego. They don't get booed in the way that, the Mets fans were booing the Javi Baez days of the Mets. You want to have this team direct their energy and those vibes towards the enemy, and that would be the Padres this weekend. And then for the Mets team, these guys are going to come out and do their thing, and I'm excited for it.
Let's get ready to rock. Yeah, just putting a bow tie, I want a donut. Putting a bow tie on this Mets season. Alonso Lindor, the clear-cut MVPs, Edwin Diaz. I mean, this bullpen, he made or break this team, and this is a team that struggled down the stretch with him at times. He was huge. A couple of unsung heroes that I got to show love to on this team. One of them, got to show love to Trevor Williams. What a season coming in. Spot start. You needed him long relief. Trevor Williams finished with a 3.21 ERA. Mm-hmm. And he was an overlooked guy who was just absolutely tremendous. The Mets had 2 15-game winners, and they weren't DeGrom or Scherzer. They were Chris Bassett and Carlos Carrasco. Cookie, the Lindor trade at one point was looking like the Cookie trade with how good he was pitching. And then Lindor said, I'm here. And Lindor and Carrasco, that trade looks good. Bassett, great year. Taijuan Walker, solid year, 3.49. The middle relief, got to give credit. Another unsung hero, Adam Ottavino, 2.06 ERA. He was that bridge that they badly needed in the 8th inning when Lugo was struggling, when other guys were struggling, when Trevor May was struggling, when he was hurt. Adam Ottavino was that guy. And then the lineup, they need. I'm not going to cry for Marte again. He saw the IG story. He knows fans want him back. I don't think he's going to be ready for this wild card round. He was just glue in that lineup. Escobar, like you said, Canna started off absolutely so hot. Like you said, he's got gas, but still had a very respectable and similar to what his numbers have looked like in his career season for a good value. So the Mets got a lot across the board. They didn't get much from catcher. Nito outplayed McCann, but catcher was the one weak spot.
Yeah.
But across the board, this was fun. Mets-Padres, best 2 out of 3, Figgy. Let's preview it. Here we go. Game 1, we said it's Scherzer, it's Darvish. Darvish has killed the Mets. He's 16.8, 3.1 ERA this year. This is why you pay Scherzer. You pay him for at least 7 postseason starts. 1 wild card. You hope 2 DS, 2 CS, 2 World Series. That's at the least. Maybe even a bullpen appearance in there. You paid him to make 7 starts and win you a ring. This is his money. 8:07 ESPN. Saturday, we expect Musgrove versus either Bassett or DeGrom, depending on game 1. And we expect Snell versus either Bassett. If it goes to game 3, it'll be Snell versus, you expect DeGrom unless DeGrom loses game 2. Break this series down for me, Figgy. How do you see this playing out? Do you see the Mets stopping, their big guys and Machado and Soto and Bell? Break it down. Give me your prediction.
Yeah, no, I think, Soto has not looked like the Soto, and he's the X factor in all of this, right? Because if he is the guy who has been in the playoffs and World Series and that dominant kind of hitter who's not afraid of anyone, and here he's going to go game 1 against his former teammate. That's a tremendous matchup in itself, and see how Scherzer can exploit weaknesses that he's seen over the years and just to continue to keep Soto as a 240 hitter. If you can do that for this series, then you're doing all right. Machado, of course, he's the guy that stirs it from the right side, and just his power is undeniable. His swagger is undeniable, but he's a guy that can be pitched to as well. You just can't make many mistakes. And we saw in the Braves series that, these mistakes weren't just being hit for singles. They were being hit for home runs. keep them to solo home runs, and you still have a chance. As long as the Mets offense finds ways to score runs, and they're going to have to do the little things. They're going to have to be able to go first to third on a base hit. They're going to have to be able to, two-strike approach and hit the ball the other way. Darvish has so many weapons, makes the ball move all over the strike zone. It's going to come down to execution, and the Mets were able to execute much more efficiently this season because of the way that Eric Chavez had these guys, taking that two-strike approach and, taking what was given to them. So the shifting and the overshifting, the Padres do a big job of that, where Machado was playing right field at times, and that to me is where you're going to have to do the little things. Again, keep them feeling like the pressure is always on them, and the fans can help in that element, but I think the Mets will help themselves. McNeil is clicking on all cylinders right now. He's on a high after winning this batting title and being that guy in the lineup that can do the things with small ball and hitting the ball the other way. And I think Alonso is going to have a statement swing that is going to be that moment that gets etched in stone or bronze someday. And that, it's just been that kind of a year for Pete Alonso, and I don't see that slowing down anytime soon.
So do the Mets win in 2? Do they win in 3?
I got the Mets winning in 2. I got the Mets winning in 2. I have it being close games, but I think, again, in close games, who do I got closing the game out? I got Edwin Diaz holding a 1-run lead in the first game. I go in the second game. I think the Mets pull away a little bit towards the end. They have a 3-run lead, and I'm not even opposed to seeing Diaz going back to back to make sure that the door is shut and shut hard.
And listen, I hope the route works, and I hope it can, because it sets you up for long-term success. If you can do Bassett game 2, if you can have DeGrom twice against the Dodgers, or Max twice, or you get DeGrom twice, you get Max once and once out of the bullpen. If you can get 3 and maybe 3.5, or like 3 in 1 inning figure, or 3 in 2 innings, if you get 3 innings or 3 games, 2/3 or whatever it is, I can't do the math.
There goes the math.
If you get some kind of combo of Scherzer and DeGrom in 3 to 4 of the games in some scenario in the DS against a Dodgers team that was just historic this year with how good they were, you're setting yourself up nicely. And if you get through there, revenge
if the other team makes it. You don't worry about anybody else.
We won't worry about that yet. We'll talk about that in a week on Amazing But True, hopefully. But you get your chance of revenge. I'm going to say the Mets sweep 2. I'll be there all 3 if it happens. It'll be confusing with Sunday because Jets and Giants, I'd like them to finish in 2. So my life isn't an absolute, poop show Sunday and Monday. It could get crazy. So Mets in 2. That's right. Mets in 2. I'm like the Suns in 4 guy, where Mets in 2. Yeah. Peace. This is going to be fun, Figgy. I'm excited. Citi Field back, and 2 out of 3 makes it a lot, I'd say, less stressful than the 1-game playoff, because it's not over. Twitter, if they lose Friday, it's going to be season over. It's over. Yeah. But it's 2 out of 3. So, don't lose hope if they lose Friday. But Max, give us 8. Diaz, give us trumpets and rock this place. And plus, think of a celebration Saturday night. You might not wake up for the 9:30 a.m. London Giants game. Not the best time to have a Giants morning game when we're getting hammered on Saturday night celebrating the Mets moving on. But a Saturday night celebration in Queens. I'm pumped up. I love the playoffs. It never happens in my life. It's happened 2000, 2006, 2015, and I don't even count it. It's happened 3 times, essentially. You don't count the stupid 1 game with TJ Rivera and the dildo. It's been happened 3 times in 31 years. That's once a decade. And one of those decades don't count because I couldn't even speak or walk for 5 or 6 of those years. Essentially 3 times in 2 decades. Give me a run. I've been dreaming of this, and I predicted it. Mets will win the World Series. Mets take the Padres. We'll be back on Monday, hopefully after, and 99. Sorry, good job by Andrew Hart. So 99, the first year I was a fan, 2000, 2006, 2015, 2005 times in my 31 years on planet Earth. But, still not enough. So this one is going to be special.
Enough.
Never enough. Never.
There we go.
The greatest showman, Max Scherzer, takes the hill. There we go. All right. Well, we will be back Monday, hopefully recapping moving on to the NLDS. Coming up next on Amazing But True, friend of the program, your favorite sideline reporter for SNY and the Mets. That would be Steve Gelbs. Coming up next on Amazing But True. All right, we're back on Amazing But True, and joining us now, you see him on SNY. doing the Mets and Jets, of course. You can catch him all playoffs long, pre and post game coverage, Mets Playoff Live. Love that, Mets Playoff Live. You'll hear all the pre and post game coverage at SNY. Fortunately, we don't get GKR and this guy. That would be Steve Gelbs during the playoffs. Follow him on Twitter. Congrats, 100,000 followers. You hit the 6-figure mark. Brush some dirt off your shoulders. Steve Gelbs, welcome to the show.
Wow. How about that? I mean, that's a great job by you to have that information. I didn't want to be the guy that bragged about it, but 100K, you want to shout it from the rooftop. So now we're charging forward. What's the next milestone after 100,000? What do you think?
500,000.
500,000?
No, that's aggressive. I think like 125 is. I celebrated. I had to pop the bottle for 8,000. So like when I get to 10, I'm scared. I might not survive. I might have just the biggest party of all time.
When I was covering high school sports out of college, I had 500 followers. I remember thinking that was like the biggest deal ever. So, we'll take it.
Yeah, you add the blue check, and oh my goodness, you're walking through the streets with the Vince McMahon walk. Figgy, you are not verified, so you're a loser.
Oh wait, let me explain to you that one. So the other night I wrote to Mike Cameron, I DM'd him, and he comes back and he's like, "If this is really Figgy, you'd be verified and you'd have a check mark." And I go, "Funny story." I go, "When I got let go by SNY, I used to be Fig SNY." I go, "They made me change my handle, and when I changed my handle, I lost my check mark." Yep. I wrote immediately to Twitter, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm the same person still. I'm still the same professional athlete. Why is my check gone?" Never got a response for 2 years. Never got a response, and nobody could do anything about it. I even talked to you, I think, in the beginning with the post. I was like, first thing I got to do is get my damn check mark back. But Mike Cameron was like, "This can't be you. You'd have a check mark." I go, no, bro. It is me. I go, once they let me go, I lost that check mark. I'm getting it back, though. So he said the Players Association could get it for me. So it's in the works.
That's enough about check marks. We're in the playoffs here. Let's get back to business. Is your hamstring okay from the sausage race still? Are you still resting up? How are your legs doing?
I'm feeling okay right now, but I all joking aside, I was stunned when I woke up the next morning with how much pain my legs were in. Not kidding. Like that thing. I mean, A, I'm not running sprints all that often right now, but B, that thing was so heavy and so high up that you saw how everybody's asked to like keep their arms in. Mm-hmm. It's literally because if you don't hold on to that thing, it will topple forward. So there's a lot of different muscle groups working to try and keep you upright as you're also trying to win a race. So I'm good now, but it took a couple of days to recover from that.
Two things. Of course, now you know what it's like to feel like being tall. And the second thing is, could you imagine Randall Simon adding to that with a bat across the back of the head?
It's I learned a valuable couple of lessons. Let's put it that way.
Did you try to do the slide? Did they say no? What happened with the slide? Because everyone wanted it. You teased us with the little baby slide, which is probably what I would have done too, the little baby one. But what happened?
What happened is that the last guy that did it broke 6 ribs and an arm. I got playoffs to cover, so I'm not risking that. I'll get in a sausage costume. I'll slide down a regular slide, and that's it.
That's a fair excuse. Well, the playoffs are here, Steve. You'll also be doing, of course, Jets pre and post game, although there will be conflicts if there's a game 3. We'll see if it gets there. We'll see how the rotation shapes out. I'm curious, in your opinion, what would you do if you were Buck? If, max game 1, do you throw game 2 DeGrom if you win game 1? Or do you save him, or do you throw Bassett? What do you do?
No, I've been thinking about this. I actually put it out on Twitter. Losing the division was such a gut punch because it took away your ability to really match up your pitching in that division series. And what this would do if you win game 1 and go with Bassett in game 2 is give you that ability back to match up the pitching the way you would want it. So you win game 1, you go with Bassett game 2. The worst case scenario there is that you have Jacob deGrom pitching an elimination must-win game 3. The best case scenario is that you start the DS with deGrom going game 1, with Scherzer going game 2 on regular rest, and then the opportunity to bring Scherzer back for game 5. deGrom on game 5 also on regular rest. And so you get the opportunity to have those guys 3 out of the 5 games, and you're going to have to use deGrom and Scherzer potentially in that wild card series twice anyway. So it doesn't matter if you win game 1. It doesn't matter to me if you're going deGrom game 2 or game 3. So again, to me, it's a no-brainer. You win game 1, you go with Bassett game 2, and then you potentially have that rotation set up for the division series. Worst case scenario, you've got DeGrom pitching in elimination game 3.
Yeah, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think you have to definitely go by what happens in game 1. Game 1, you lose. Now it's a must win. You have to go with DeGrom, and you throw caution to the wind because you have to get through to the next series. So yeah, I like to have those options. And again, that's the beauty of it, right? When you have 2 aces, you can play them however you see fit, but that would shake out best case scenario. And that would be a fantastic thing for the Mets to be able to go Scherzer, Bassett, then come back, like you said, DeGrom, then Scherzer again, and you have DeGrom in a game 5. Either way it shapes out, I know it wasn't the best case scenario about the wild card, but I have to keep reminding people the wild card has gone on to win the World Series. You know, in the last 5 years, even it's at least 2 times that I know of off the top of my head. And I think it's something that's still very, very doable because you still have to beat those teams. You have to beat the Dodgers.
Yeah,
right?
I agree with you. And, you know, Buck even mentioned it the other day that he was getting phone calls from Jim Leland saying, hey, remember, I won the World Series coming out of the wild card. The difference, if we're being fair, though, is that prior to a few years ago, the wild card used to be one of 4 teams. And so it's not quite the same as it is right now. You still have to win that first series. And this is by no means going to be a cakewalk. San Diego Padres have given the Mets fits this year. Yu Darvish has given the Mets fits this year. So this is something that essentially you're now putting yourself at risk a lot earlier than you necessarily would have wanted to. And we've talked about how it affects the pitching. We haven't even gotten into the fact that that extra week could have been utilized to get Starling Marte back, who the Mets have missed desperately since he's been out with that broken finger. But to your original point, by no stretch of the imagination is this season over, is this team that is incapable of winning the World Series. If this pitching is what it has been for most of the season, not what it's been for the last couple of weeks, if these guys are what they were for most of the year, then they have as good a shot as anyone to be there in the end. And I think you gotta, I understand the disappointment, and Mets fans are totally within their rights to be disappointed with how this September went and with getting swept by the Braves and not winning the division. But at some point, and I think that point is now, you have to turn the page, recognize what this team accomplished and what it still has in front of them.
Yeah, I've gone over it. Sunday night, we did a show in Atlantic City, and I was fuming. I was yelling. I pleaded for Starling Marte to save us, come back. He actually saw my Instagram story, so he knows that Mets fans want him back desperately. He watched it. He's going to come back. Thanks to me. I'm going to take all credit. But, it's not looking good. The guy can't grip a bat fully, can't throw a ball. I mean, how he comes back and plays, I'm shocked if he's not back for the wild card. I think that's kind of a lock. Your hope is he's going to be back in Los Angeles. Are you concerned with the lineup here? Like, what do you do? Is it Alvarez? Do you trust him to play these wild card games? Do you just go with the Vogie, Naquin combo? What do you do here for DH and these final roster spots?
Man, that's a tough call, because you look at Alvarez and even the at-bats he was taking. There were a couple at-bats in Atlanta where it looked like he was trying to make something happen and he was swinging out of his shoes, but he really does look like he's got it. It looks different. The ball is different off his bat. The at-bats, I think, have been impressive for the most part. And the hard thing for me is the sample size. Like, I really, if the Mets were even considering doing what they ultimately did and bringing Alvarez up, I wish they would have done it earlier, just so that he had more time to get his feet wet and to be in prime position to take advantage of that opportunity down the stretch. But I do think I would go with him at least as part of the platoon. I'd probably go with Vogelback against righties, but I would lean giving Alvarez that chance against lefties at this point, just because of what he can do, what that ball sounds like off of his bat. And so now I'd see what happened. In terms of the lineup, though, I think that's where you miss Marte so much. I think this lineup is fine and will be fine, but Marte is legitimately everything that this team was built on, right? If you were to take one player and say that guy is the prototypical 2022 Met, it's Starling Marte. He can hit for power, but he doesn't rely on power. He puts the ball in play. He puts pressure on the defense using his legs. He puts pressure on the pitcher when he's on first base because of his threat to go. I just think he changes the entire dynamic of what a team needs to think about. He's an excellent defender. He saves so much, even from, you hear Buck talk about it all the time, that extra 90 feet that they won't go based on what Marte can do with his arm. And so there's no sugarcoating it. The team misses him dearly. The lineup's shorter without him. And they're missing a huge element. So they're going to have to deal with it. You're right. Probably in this wild card series, I think it would surprise a lot of people if he came back. And if he did, is he able to be effective right off the bat? Probably not. But they need to get him back as soon as possible. You would hope if they get through that wild card series that he could be there for the DS, because I do think that, him not being around has completely changed the dynamic of what this team looks like and what this offense can do.
Yeah, having said all that, I think it's a no-brainer. I would say the second MVP of this team has to be Eric Chavez, getting these guys to buy into a different brand of baseball, going back to the old school mentality of putting the ball in play. You see McNeil getting rid of the home run swing and the dip in his swing, now winning a batting title. You see all these guys, Pete Alonso especially, what did he do? Run production, putting RBIs, hitting the ball the other way, taking advantage of the shift and not trying to beat your head against a wall and beat the shift by hitting the ball over 110 miles an hour. But hey, you know what? A 70-mile-an-hour roller through the second base side when there's nobody there. That's the kind of baseball that this 2022 team is built off of. And we didn't see a lot of that in Atlanta. We didn't see a lot of that potential to run. Guys got on base and it was station to station. It wasn't what we're used to seeing with like a Starling Marte. So I think that's the thing that you can look at with this Braves series. All the things that went wrong, they're fixable, right? There is something that you can go back and say, okay, we need to maybe do more of this, maybe a little more hit and run, maybe a little bit more, put the pressure on Travis d'Arnaud to block and throw somebody out at the same time. So I think that's something that I keep trying to harp when I was talking Jake off the ledge in Atlantic City was it seems darkest right now, but they won the battle. They didn't necessarily win the war.
There are a couple of points that you made there that I want to follow up on because I think they're all extremely valid. But to your latter point about that Braves series and the team not necessarily looking like the version of the Mets that we've seen throughout the majority of the season, I think that series was critical for a lot of the Mets who have never experienced the postseason before. And there are a lot of guys who have never experienced the postseason before. I remember talking to Trevor May prior to Game 1 in Atlanta. And he said, no matter which way this series goes, I don't think people understand how necessary this is for a lot of us to go through. Because the one thing, and Figgy, you can speak to this, right? The one thing about baseball is that you play so many games that oftentimes no one game seems all that important. The collective seems important, but no one game seems like a do or die. And then all of a sudden, and Trevor May's experienced this, has been in the playoffs a couple of times, you get to the postseason and the feeling, the pressure is so different on that one day than any day you've experienced before that a lot of guys seize up because they've never experienced that before. And so for not the Max Scherzers or the DeGroms or even the Lindors of the world. They've been through it before. But for Pete Alonso and for Brandon Nimmo and for Jeff McNeil, guys like that, that Braves series was the stakes without the stakes, if that makes sense. It was the stakes.
Oh yeah,
it was really important, but they had a little bit of a mulligan. And so I think even Pete Alonso said after the series, I've never experienced something like that before. Brandon Nimmo, before the series started, told me that he had not been that nervous or that anxious since his first opening day. And so I think they got that out of the way. I think they came back and it was important for them to destroy the Nationals the way that they did. And now you're going to come to Citi Field on Friday. The place is going to be electric. You're going to have Max Scherzer on the mound, who is built for moments like this. And I just think that the page will have been turned. I think that the energy will be there. And I really do believe you're going to see the Mets team that we've seen for, 150, maybe not the last week and a half, but I think they're going to do some things. And I'm confident that they're going to show up in that wild card series.
So much at stake. I'm about to cut a piece of steak, Steve. Oh my goodness, got me hungry over here. I was eating steak last weekend in AC when there was a lot at stake. What do you think the Mets do here? I said on SNY YouTube before the season. I said Mets are winning the World Series. I had Mets White Sox. Tony La Russa did not help that prediction very much. But I do think the Mets are still going to go on a run and win it. Give us your prediction.
I don't want to predict all the way to the World Series, but I do think that they're going to show up in a big way and make a statement against the Padres. I really think that Scherzer and DeGrom, if he has to pitch against the Padres, are going to have real big games. I truly believe that. And I think Bassett too, Bassett, I think, wants another crack at this. I remember something that Jeremy Hefner said to me earlier in the season where we were talking about Bassett, and he said, he's kind of like this throwback grunge pitcher. And I said, what do you mean by that? He goes, just think Curt Schilling with the bloody sock. Like, he's going to do anything and everything to find a way to win. And so I know that they did not come up big in a big spot last weekend, but I really believe that this starting pitching staff is going to come up huge in this series against the Padres. And I think that these guys are going to find a way. The offense is going to find a way to do enough to beat this Padres team, a very good Padres team that probably hasn't shown its full capabilities yet. And you could certainly see that happening in the postseason. But I think they're going to win the wild card round. And I think that they're going to have a pretty great series with the Dodgers. I don't want to predict that they're going to beat the Dodgers. I think they're going to have a pretty great series against the Dodgers, and I could see it going either way. But can I see this team going on a run and winning the World Series and get into the World Series? No doubt I can see it happening. But it's pretty tough to make that prediction right now. I'll predict that they beat the Padres, and let's say it goes 5 against the Dodgers.
Yeah, look, Bassett, of course, like we said, he was against the ropes and he was battling back. He was one pitch away from getting out of that, and he did a little too much, kept trying to overthrow the fastball, missing his location, winds up being a little dribbler that gets through the middle, and not something that where he gave up a home run, but that hurt even more than the home runs that DeGrom gave up or that Scherzer gave up, because, those are solo shots right there, right?
Yep.
So I think more than anything, you learn from that experience, that playoff atmosphere. So a guy like Bassett learned from that and how to
Figgy, he's also going to be a free agent. So this is where he's going to earn his checks. This is where he can get a monster deal if he has a big October.
He had an extension already. So I think that's where he's the kind of guy that you're going to keep around for a while because of what he adds to this. He's a guy that's very steady. He had his career year with wins and strikeouts, and he's everything you want in a pitcher, especially nowadays with the slower curveball and the ability to throw the higher fastball up top. I look at we were just talking about, to your point about everybody, taking their game up another level. Alvarez looked overmatched those first few at bats, especially that against Fried, and then all of a sudden that Kenley Jansen at bat, that was, it's embarrassing for him. And you can see the little smile that he had underneath, inside might have been a different feeling, but he tried to smile it off. Then you start seeing their bats getting a little better. The timing is getting there. And then a breaking ball after a 97 mile an hour fastball, and he's right on it and crushes it. And then you say, okay, makes sense. And I said on our podcast, wish they would have brought him up in the beginning of September. Even I know when he was injured, let him rehab up there. Let him see what it's like to be in the big leagues. That third deck is an element that you can't ever duplicate until you get there. So you have that, and then you have the playoff atmosphere with the fans, having 50,000 fans doing the tomahawk chop and the lights going on and off and all that. That is intimidating. That is imposing. And so for the team to get that to happen to them, those starters are just chomping at the bit to get back out there. I want to see these starters going 6 innings, 7 if possible, and then you get a chance to hand it over to Diaz. And when you're at home and the trumpets are blaring, let's see who folds under the pressure then. Because I think this team, like you said, is built to win. This team has a chance now to come back from the scrap heaps of everybody in New York, laughing, they got swept. Oh, what happened? They lost the division. They have the same wins and losses, at the end of
101 games.
At the end of the day, 101 games. You got a guy who won a batting title. You got a guy, another guy who won the RBI title. You got up and down. Lindor broke all the records for the Mets shortstops. So there's so many things that happened this year that you can be happy about, but you have to win game 1 with Max Scherzer on the mound. And I would take no one other than Max Scherzer. Jacob deGrom, don't get me wrong, best pitcher on the planet when he's healthy and all that. But Max Scherzer has been built for playoff baseball. And when he has a chip on his shoulder, I think we remember when the Nats didn't make the playoffs and they lost to the Mets and the Mets wound up clinching. And what did he do the next day?
No hitter.
He threw the no hitter against them with what, 20, almost 20 Ks.
Yeah. So it was crazy. I agree with all that. And I'll say this as well, that the one thing, again, it keeps getting lost, but the one trait that we talked about with this team all season was their relentlessness, and we talked about their ability to overcome and to bounce back, and to, like, nothing ever lingered with these guys. And so I'm not trying to downplay how disappointing the end of the season was, right? It was a huge letdown to not win this division, to go 6-8 in September against the Cubs, A's, and Nationals. Like they, you win 1-2 of those games, that's it, right? But this team has this ability all season long that we've seen to bounce back and to be resilient. And I just think we're going to see it again. And to your point, Figgy, I mean, 101 games. Like, think about where this team's been. Think about where this team was a year ago. Yeah. And if you were to say to anybody, they're going to win 101 games next year, Jeff McNeil's going to bounce back and win the batting title, Francisco Lindor is going to bounce back and have the greatest season that a Mets shortstop's ever had, Pete Alonso is going to have 131 RBIs, Max Scherzer is going to be a New York Met, and he's going to be pitching game 1 at Citi Field. Like, there needs to be a little bit of perspective. You know what I mean? Yep. Like, this team has done some sensational things, and it's not done yet. It's not done yet, and everything is still right in front of them. So we'll see. It's no guarantee, but I think it's time to turn the page from the disappointment and get fired up, because there hasn't been Mets playoff baseball in a long time here, since 2016. And you look at that team, and you look at the team that they're sending out there on Friday night. It's a world of difference.
Hearts, can we cut that up? It's not done yet. I'm fired up, Steve. Let's go. October, playoff baseball. Let's go. This is the second most wins in franchise history. The team that had more, 1986. When's the last time they won the World Series? 1986. What does that mean? The Mets are winning the World Series in 2022. The transitive property states that the Mets are 2022 World Series champions. Rock the city all October. They'll be road warriors. By the way, it's like a hazard, I feel like, for the Braves to shut the lights off and on. Like, I feel like you could fall down the stairs. I don't like that they do that. It's not good to the Mets in the dugout. We could get an injury here. We got enough of those. Last one, Steve. What was your favorite moment this year from the Mets? There were so many. The arigato, a couple weeks ago with Escobar was incredible.
Well, that's what he says that all the time after interviews. We did that after his cycle too. Arigato. Gosh, there were so many of them. There were, the combined no-hitter was great. Old Timers Day was awesome. Probably the comeback in Philly has to be my favorite one, though. That was pretty special. I mean, it was such a blowout that we had a whole bit on that same night where the producer was like, "Hey, come to the truck, take a picture watching the Rangers playoff game, and we'll show your seat being empty, and we'll make a whole thing of it." And it was a whole big joke. And then I got back to my seat, and they came back from, 7 runs down and won. And I think that was the first indication to me that things might be a little different. So that, I think, is my favorite memory, but there were a ton of them. And again, Old Timers Day, just because of it just felt, it's hard to describe what it was like to be out there with all those guys, but the sense of appreciation for them to all be back and be recognized, and the way it was done, and there was just something that, and even seeing the current Mets standing out on the top step of the dugout and watching and talking to the former Mets, it was really special. The way that the history was embraced between Keith getting his number retired, there were so many great moments for this franchise this season. It was a special year, and again, it still has the potential to be extra special.
Yeah, I mean, I have to go back to our first spring training together down at SNY, and we were walking out on the concourse, and people were like, "Hey," and they'd wave, and they're like, "Who are you guys?" You've come a long way, my man. 100,000 followers, that's tremendous. And I think of all the memories that you've had, and all the things that you've done and you brought to the broadcast on a nightly basis. I mean, is there one moment that has stood out more than any other?
Over the years, or just
over the
this
years?
year?
Over the years.
You know,
sausage race for sure.
I mean, this year we really had so many fun things between the sausage race and the catching the foul ball in Pittsburgh, Jake the Cup Snake guy. I mean, we had a lot of really fun things that happened this year, but it's still hard to ever top for me the Wilmer Flores walk-off in 2015. Yeah. That that's the one that I always go back to and I say, how did this compare? How did this moment compare to that?
Right.
And I don't know that anything really ever will, barring a World Series win, what that guy went through and the raw emotions of the 48 hours before, and how much the fan base went from really being ready to say, see you, Wilmer, to just embracing him and chanting his name, to have him hit that walk-off home run and to be able to be on the field doing that walk-off interview immediately after. It was so special, and it was a one-of-a-kind moment. And I have a hard time seeing this perfect storm of events coming together where just on a human level, you feel as happy for one human being and just a great person than happened on that night. So for me, over all the years, I still go back to that one. That was tops.
Well, Steve Gelbs, you are a great person, and you can be seen on the pre and post game coverage on SNY. Starts today, Thursday. You'll get it the off days, the game day, every day. You'll see him every day. You'll see him on the Jets pre and post game. I know your Rangers season begins on Tuesday. We're back with Up in the Blue Seats podcast. We'll have you on there. We'll just get you across the board. Rangers, you got Jets, Mets. So follow him on Twitter. Get him to 103,000 followers at Steve Gelbs, and looking forward to seeing you at the ballpark, hopefully in November too. I'm hoping till November 5th, November 6th.
Yeah, you said transitive property. It's done. It's fait accompli.
My mom's a math teacher. I make the rules. That's how it goes. Enjoy the playoff run. We'll see you at Citi Field. Thanks for coming on Amazin But True.
All right, guys. See you.